Welcome in, everyone. Back to Rock Rants. I'm Ryan, here with,
Smiggy.
and today we are talking about Deftones. Some of the ways that I've heard Deftones described, they're heavy, they can be melodic, they get in touch with their spiritual side, they're horny, they can be dark, they're all over the place. And Deftones is one of my personal favorite bands. Recently, back in August, they released their newest album, Private Music. I believe it's their 10th studio album that they've come out with. And while I, like I said, am no stranger to Deftones, this is one of Smiggy's first experiences with Deftones, minus maybe a song or two here or there in the past. So we're going to look at the new album from the perspective of someone who's loved them a long time versus someone who is kind of new to their music. So Smiggy, I'm curious. Initial thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm no stranger to being horny, so that's curious that this is a band that seems like it would be for me. Like Ryan always says, we don't really ever talk about the albums or the bands or anything before we come onto the podcast. But whenever we were discussing this after Baby Metal last week, you did say something to the effect of, if you aren't a Deftones fan or if you haven't listened to much of their music, maybe this album isn't the first one that you should listen to. And I kind of see why. Now, I'm not going to say the Def part of the band name is accurate, but I will say I found myself kind of just in a trance of forgetting that I was listening to the album in the first place, but keeping it on. So whatever that may mean in your head initially, what I mean for it to sound like is, I think this ended up being a really good background soundtrack for me. Like if I'm at work trying to focus on something, or if I'm at home editing other things, this, that, the other, I think it was really good for that. I think the more I tried to really engage with the music itself, the less I was able to. So initial thoughts as we get into it is, I don't think it was necessarily a great album, but I don't think that the sounds they went for or the band as a whole was bad. There was a lot that I could tell. Okay, there's some other songs. The epitome of it is this, actually. Every time I would listen to the album on Spotify, it would just randomly start playing a different album or a different song after the album was over. And every time that would happen, I would find myself getting very excited and go to like mark it down as my favorite song or another one to go back to, only to find out that it wasn't a song from this album. So it's a lot of good about Deftones as a whole, but it wasn't as much good about the album.
It's interesting that you said that and you brought up the word trance, because something that Deftones can do is they can get pretty heavy, but they can also get really melodic. And trance is one of the ways that I would describe some of their songs, or dreamy, like a dream state sort of thing. It's hard for me to describe. I'm not good with genres and things like that, but they really leaned into that trance, dreamy kind of sound for a lot of this album. If you're not familiar with their older stuff, like I said, they can get heavy. I think the way that his screams and stuff can be really unique. It's almost sometimes on certain songs like Royal and Rocket Skate, it's like a shriek almost. Like he gets really high with his scream sometimes. And yeah, I just think they have really unique music, whether it's heavy or whether it's more like this trance dreamlike kind of music. I'm personally okay with them leaning in this direction, but the reason I said maybe it's not good for your first one to listen to is because while it leans into that side of their music, and I'm not going to say it's not as heavy, they have a couple heavy tracks on here, but there are other albums, in my opinion, like Diamond Eyes, which isn't even my favorite one by them, but I think it has a good mix of their entire sound, what they can sound like. Chino, their singer, he was on a list one time. I remember looking at Loudwire. He was on a list one time of top 10 singers that can sing you to sleep or scare you to death, I think is what the article title was, just because he's got such a like soothing voice, in my opinion. And I think a lot of the times in their songs, and they did it a lot on this album, his voice almost just becomes like another instrument. And I know that's weird, like a weird thing to say, but instead of like putting his vocals over to make them stand out, it's more of like to blend in and fit with the music the best. So that's why I said it might not be the best one to start with. But yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed this one from them. But it's interesting that you said other songs from other albums would come on and they would be your favorite ones.
Yeah, so I think you kind of nailed it because part of my notes, ironically enough, it's in the bad part. It does say that Chino, his vocals are angelic to the ears, like you said, it almost being a harmony of another instrumental in there. It has a beautiful emotional ambiguity to it, almost where there's just a lot going on. He has a great range, but within this album itself, I would have just liked to see what seemed honestly like a lot of buildup just amount to something in any of the songs. There were so many songs, and I hate to go back to the idea that a lot of these songs sounded the same to me, but some of them certainly did. Again, they fell into that category of the middle of the album sounds like it's 3-4 straight songs of the same thing, where the first minute of the song, it feels like it's ramping up to something, to a drop into a chorus or into a second verse that hits a little heavier, but it just kind of kept riding a smooth wave, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But when it gives you that feeling that something new is coming, especially for so many songs in a row, that's what I didn't really love. Like Infinite Source and Souvenir, they bounce between heavy and calm without really choosing an identity. And I think the song was called Locked Club, maybe, but yeah, that song, it draws you in immediately. But for me, it just continued to lose me as the song goes on and just, again, felt a little repetitive. So if this is a newer sound for them, I think they have something good here. I would just like to see them not lock in so hard to one specific aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about it, a lot of people said about one of their albums called Gore. So Private Music came out recently. 5 years ago, they came out with an album called Ohms. Before that is when Gore came out. I want to say it was like 2016 or something like that. And I would say it's the least heavy out of all of their albums, even though it has its moments. But kind of like you're saying, from what I heard people say, and I talked to my brother about it. Me and my brother are both big Deftones fans. Him and I don't agree on a whole lot of music, but Deftones is one of them. Talking to him about Gore, he said it sounded like one long Deftones ballad where like maybe it felt like it was building up to something, but that punch was never there. So the way you're describing this one is how you describe Gore. So I would say if you weren't the biggest fan of this one because there was no solid delivery after like what felt like a build-up, maybe don't go to that one. But they have other albums I think that you probably enjoy a little bit more, based off of what you said so far about Private Music.
So here's something. Tell me if this kind of knocks head on what you think this album is about, or rather, if you think this is something that Deftones kind of repeats as a theme throughout their albums. Because to me, it just felt like the entire album was more of an atmospheric or ambient experience. This is kind of something we already said, where his vocals can play like lull you to sleep in a good way, or they could be heavier, this, that, the other. But it felt like that more ambient experience. It felt like you're just floating in a haze through each song. I say as I took NyQuil right before starting recording. But it feels like you're floating in a haze through each song, waiting for it to form into something that breathes tangible urgency or catharsis. But it just simply keeps a steady rhythm and fading, echoing vocals that feel more complimentary than anything.
I think you nailed it, but I really like that about it. When you said ambient, and what was the other word? Whatever other word you said with ambient.
Atmospheric.
I mean, atmospheric. Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. And to where you're saying, like, maybe it's, if you're looking for something to grab your attention more, maybe that's not a good thing. But I don't know. There's something about their music that I can just throw in headphones, and especially at nighttime, because I don't do this so much anymore, but I used to put in my headphones and lay down, and not even if I wasn't falling asleep to music, I would run through a few songs, kind of relax. I can just get lost in that sound that they have. So what you're saying about it, the first time I listened to it, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was a little bit not underwhelmed, but it's just whelmed. was like, yeah, that was a pretty decent Deftones album. Not that
This
bad.
is music.
But the more I listened to it, yeah, it's fine. But the more I listened to it, there were more little things that I picked up on that really, things that I didn't pick up on before that stood out to me the second, third, or I mean, I've listened to this probably 20 times now, but just small things that didn't really stand out the first time, but they did the next.
Fair. I mean, the truth be told, too, everything that I've already said has covered all of the notes under the bad section that I had. So if that's the worst that I have to say about this album, and if that is the point that they were going for, to kind of just give you that background experience, there's nothing wrong with that. That's to me never necessarily going to make for a 9 out of 10 album. But if you have such a discography, a band that was formed in 1988, which I know you defended to the death that their first album didn't come out until after we were born, which is fair enough. But when you have a longer history like that, you are afforded more chances to sprinkle in things like this. So even though I think they did things that could never necessarily amount to an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, I don't think what they did was bad. I just think it was a lot different, and it's going to fit a certain set of moods rather than be, album of the year material.
Yeah, I agree. As far as it, you have to be in a certain kind of mood to listen to it anyway. I think there are other things that maybe you'll throw on first, but like you said, when I'm in a certain kind of mood, and what they do when they create that atmosphere with their music is what I really like about it. I didn't start listening to Deftones until, let me think about this. Okay. We played Guitar Hero before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the reboot that they tried to do, Guitar Hero Live?
Yes.
Where they came out with a new controller and all that sort of stuff. Well,
it was misery.
They had the base game. They had the base game with 30 songs on it, and then they had an online mode that had 300 songs that you could choose from. Now, typical microtransaction fashion, you could either pay money to get tokens to play the songs that you want, or the online mode had an MTV style thing where they would just play songs all day long, and you could jump in the middle of a song and then play whatever they gave you. And there was a song called Diamond Eyes by Deftones on there, and that was the first time that I had heard them besides the song Change. That was off White Pony. But yeah, I heard Diamond Eyes, and it was mind-blowing. It just, something clicked. I was like, this song is incredible. And it spiraled from there of listening to Deftones from then on. And that was even when I was working at one of my old jobs, we had a group playlist so we could add songs to that we could then play throughout the store. I put Diamond Eyes on there, and even my boss, who he mostly listened to classic rock. Led Zeppelin was his favorite group. When he heard Diamond Eyes, he was like, I like the sound it's got going on. It's the atmosphere and everything that it has. This is good. So there's just something about that song that made me love these guys. And so them bringing that sound heavily into this, after a couple of listens, it changed my mind. I really enjoy it.
I think that I wonder how many people got into a certain band or rock music as a whole because of Guitar Hero. Because it's crazy you said that, because one of the bands that I was thinking of, so for anybody wondering too, the theme of the next 2 episodes, this one included, is going to be a band that Ryan has listened to a lot, Deftones, that I have listened to basically none of. And next week we're going to do one that I have listened to a ton of that he doesn't necessarily know. And 2 bands that I have floated out there. Well, one artist, Poppy. The other band, though, was All That Remains, a band that I just recently got back into within the last year, probably. And the only reason I know who they are, I'm sure I would have heard them throughout my life at some point, but the only reason I really know who they are is also because they had 2 songs on Guitar Hero and Rock Band. So shouts out to Legends of Rock, I think is what the third one was called, for introducing me to a few of my current favorite bands.
6 was one of them?
6. Yes, 6 was one of them. And then
I can't remember the other one.
Was this actually, I don't even know if the other one was on a Rock Band or a Guitar Hero, but it's This Calling is the name of the song. Maybe that was on a different game or something, or maybe I just heard it. Either way, though, yeah, 6 was the one. So I know this is a Ryan-dominated episode because the teacher that you are, you know much more about this than I do, but I do have some questions for you as the subject matter expert.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Nicole's hitting in. So, do you think, and I think I might already have the answer from our beginning discussion here, but are there any tracks that you think, if you deep dove the lyrics, would make the song itself better? Or are there any tracks that feel important to the album's identity?
My least favorite, and we said this a lot during Baby Metal, just because it's my least favorite doesn't mean that it's bad. But my least favorite from this album is I Think About You All the Time. I have a feeling if I did a deep dive on the lyrics or why they wrote it, it's probably a really just a really nice song. I don't think there's any hidden meaning. Like it's, I think about you all the time. This sounds like a romantic song, but in reality, I hate you and all this sort of stuff. I think it really might just be a love song about a person that they care about a lot. But it wasn't standing out to me, and that could change. There are songs that go from my least favorite to my favorite over time. So I didn't do a deep dive into the lyrics there, but it didn't hit me that hard. But I'm on the Deftones subreddit. I know he talked about how a poisonous wasteland Reddit can be.
Oh no.
But there are a lot of people that really like this one. They said that I Think About You All the Time is my favorite, or their favorite. So, maybe it's one worth re-exploring. And instead of just like, yeah, this one didn't do it for me so much, maybe actually go into the lyrics and form an interpretation.
If Reddit leads you to a path of happiness, you will be the first and potentially the last. But
That's true.
I mean, I'm just going to take every shot I can at Reddit ever, but I know there's obviously very useful information on there sometimes. So, hey, but that's kind of what I felt was the answer to this after I wrote the question was like, I don't really know if the lyrics matter too much. I mean, yes, obviously at the face of it, lyrics will always matter because you can't just, throw caca at the wall and expect it to stick. But with the theme of this album feeling more like an experience rather than listening to a rock album, it does almost feel like the lyrics within reason kind of could have just been anything and everything, as long as the ambiance again of the album kind of hits. So maybe not. We'll find out on that. But my next question, because I know my answer for this. Let me get the question out first, I guess. So did you like the album the first listen through, or did it take some time? Because for me, the first listen through, Ryan, I was ready to give this like a solid 4, which, and again, not even because it was bad necessarily. It's because I think this album actually got hurt a lot by us doing it right after Baby Metal. Like the first time I really sat down and listened to this album was the day after we recorded Baby Metal. So album of the year with 10 heaters that draw you in for traditional reasons, as opposed to this atmospheric presence that is just floating in the ether as my tentacles wave through the camera right now. It was whiplash. It was musical whiplash for me. And I was just like, I really liked that Baby Metal stuff. What the hell is this? But then I listened to it more and more. I was like, okay, this isn't a bad album. It's just I have to understand what the album itself is. So for you, was it the first time, or did you have to listen to it a couple?
So a couple things. I think you're actually a Deftones fan and you just don't know it, because one of the songs they released off Ohms as a single, the chorus says something along like climbing out of the ashes, floating off in the ether, we're miles beyond the sound. And you just described it as, floating in the ether. I mean, you nailed it. After just this album, you're starting to get a grasp on Deftones, what it's all about. A couple things before I go to the album ranking the first time. When you said the lyrics were more, maybe they don't really matter so much, they're more just general broad sense kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing here, but in preparation for this episode, instead of looking at facts about the album, I tried to look at interviews that Chino gave recently about them. And he did say when he writes a lot of their songs, instead of writing very specific details or specific things, it is more of a general sense. Take your own interpretations from it, gather what you will from the music and the lyrics. So you're nailing it. You're doing great when it comes to the Deftones assignments. But
this makes it sound. This makes it. Sorry, not to cut you off, but this makes it sound like you and I have to go on like a spiritual awakening journey to the middle of the forest, take a 10-foot wooden pipe with us that we smoke out of and just the whole discography, if not only this album 30 times over. But you know what? Live though, I think we'll get to the ranking, like the actual number ranking later, obviously. But I think you're convincing me to bump it up a few here. But continue answer to your answer.
No, first time listening through, it was, as we talked about, my crazy time at work. So the album came out, but we knew we weren't going to be doing this episode right away. I threw it on in the car on my way home after depressing days at work, and it ran through once, and I was like, that was pretty good. You know, that wasn't bad. It definitely wasn't Deftones' best. I can't even remember what my favorite song was after the first time through, but it was all right. That's why I wasn't disappointed, but I was like, you know, my initial thoughts were maybe they played it safe. I've definitely changed my mind about that after listening to it multiple times. I don't think they played anything safe. But yeah, I liked it more each listen. I would throw it on while I was working, and then when I wasn't distracted, either driving or working, just listening to the songs on their own, and definitely grew over time. I would say after my first listen, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. Remember, for anyone new here, our ranking, 5 out of 10 means average. Okay, 5 means that it is very basic average. In the middle is what we're going for.
Bar.
I know 5 out of 5 out of 10 sounds like it's bad, but for mine and Smig's ranking, that means average. So I would say like 6.5 out of 10, a little bit above average for me, and it's definitely climbed. Like you said, I'm not going to give away my answer till the end, but it's higher than a 6.5.
All right, fair enough. I think mine's climbing too. My current one is somewhere around there, but we'll see at the end. So let me hit you with the level 1 question then, even though you just half answered it. Your least and most favorite songs on the album, because you're going to ask me this in return, and I don't have an answer. I'm not going to pretend like I have an answer. I'm not going to pick one just for the sake of having one. I don't have an answer for either one of those.
Least favorite is I Think About You All the Time. And again, it's not a bad one. Just out of all the other ones, I'm not turning that one on first. Favorite is CXZ.
Okay, I'm so sorry, because as I'm sitting here parading my mouth around like I wasn't going to have an answer, if I had to forcefully pick one for favorite, that is it. That is it. At least the beginning of that song. So continue.
It's a heavier one. I don't know what he's doing, like what kind of layering they have on his voice or anything like that. But I think it sounds so good, and it's so unique compared to the other songs. And I think it stands out in just Deftones songs altogether. If I'm going to put together all of my favorite Deftones songs or rank all of them, this one is near the top. Not like a top 5 or anything, but man, I don't know. Something about it gets me hyped. Also, the 2 singles that they put out, I thought were really good. The ones that they released first were My Mind is a Mountain. I think that one's really good. It's a good opener. It's like 2.5 minutes long. Just gets its point across. So My Mind is a Mountain is really good. And Milk of the Madonna was their other one. That was their other single that they released, which I liked. It was good, but My Mind is a Mountain stood out to me a little bit more, which I found out, just quick note, I think Chino said he got that from a children's book. So there was something in a children's book about, My Mind is a Mountain. I think he just saw the phrase. Again, I'm paraphrasing the interviews that I read earlier. He saw the phrase and turned it into a song, and then later went and read the children's book. And I guess it was more about your emotions, about how it's okay to be happy or sad or angry or whatever, your mind being a mountain. But yeah, thought that was interesting. Kids' book drawing inspiration.
So that's interesting, because I do have something written down about Milk of the Madonna. And this does qualify as a good Smiggy note, which are hard to come by sometimes for these reviews, I guess. But I think that song, while I wouldn't say it's my favorite, I think if I, again, had to pick one, it's the one that you said before. But I think it does what the point of the album is, where it tries that atmospheric approach, but it doesn't try to fit too many different ideas into the song, which I know is a gripe I had earlier, where it just kind of gets repetitive with things. But I think this one did a really good job of finding its voice and just kind of stuck with it for 4 minutes. It's just good. It's not crazy good. It's not great, but I think it's just solid, good song. 4 minutes front to back. No complaints about it. So would you... This is a 2-parter. Would you recommend someone new to Deftones start with this album or save it for later? And the second part of the question is, regardless of what that answer is if somebody is starting with this album, what song do you think they should start with?
I think you should not start with this one. I don't think it's a crime if you do. I think you can still potentially really like it. So I don't think it's bad. Of course, I've said that already. It was above average my first time listening to it, and it's only grown since then. But I would honestly recommend starting with Diamond Eyes, even though it's not my favorite album of theirs. I think it covers their sound. It's got slow stuff on there. It's got the atmospheric. It's got really heavy. And I think if you listen to Diamond Eyes and you're like, there was not a single song on that album that I liked, it's like, okay, well, you're not going to like Deftones if there's not a single song you can pinpoint on that one. What was the second part? Not to start with this one. Oh, if you did, which song would it be?
Yeah.
I would start with My Mind is a Mountain. I think it's got really good guitar riffs in it. I think the drumming in it is really, really good. I like Chino's voice. He doesn't scream in this one, but it's a little bit more harsh vocals and spots, and a little bit more atmospheric and melodic in others. So I think it's a good starting point.
Okay. So here's something that I think I'm getting kind of mixed reviews on a bit. With the album itself, at least from my perspective, seeming to be, like I said, every time a song after the album came on, I was like, whoa, okay, that's my favorite song on the album. It's not on the album. So would you say that this album kind of falls in line with their previous work, or do they experiment a bit more outside of the usual style? Would you say that they're, I'm going to hit you with two questions and then two more after this answer, but would you say that this album falls in line with the previous work, or are they experimenting a bit more outside of their style? And do you think that this album accomplished what it was trying to do? Because kind of what it seems like I'm hearing from you is I'm secretly a closeted Deftones fan and can't admit it to myself because I don't know what they're supposed to sound like. But it kind of sounds to me like they both did try something new here, but not so far out of the regular that you wouldn't think this is Deftones at all.
This is so hard to answer. This is really hard to answer because I've been a Deftones fan for a long time now, whenever that Guitar Hero game came out. So I've liked them for a long time. They came out with this album, and I'm definitely not disappointed. I really, really enjoy it, and it's grown on me a lot since it's come out. But I still wouldn't recommend it as a first listen. I think it's on par with what they've done before. I do think it's different, but it's so hard to say. It's tough because it doesn't make sense when I say it definitely is on par with stuff they've done before. I don't think it's too overly experimental, but it does sound different than even their last album that they did. I know that answer makes no sense, but it's so tough.
It seems like somebody that's very, very confident in their own current style and ability that maybe, I don't know, let's just say you're a 4.0 student, you got the comb over, the preppy polo on and everything. You see somebody walk by in a jean jacket, you think maybe the bad boy lifestyle is for you. Trying a jean jacket feels good, put on the leather pants feels good, you look good. Doesn't mean that's your new identity, but it means that maybe you're broadening your horizons while still keeping the core of what you are along with it. So that's maybe a poor analogy overall to think of, but it sounds like what you're saying is this is still who Deftones are at a core, but they're leaning into a side of it that isn't maybe necessarily their premier styling.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I don't know if this has anything to do with it. Chino has said no in interviews, but I want to bring something up to you that I kind of want to get your thoughts on it. Maybe it did influence them without them realizing it. Deftones, even though they've been around for a while, I would consider them a pretty popular band just in general. They have gone viral on TikTok in the past couple years. So on TikTok, whenever sounds, they start being used over and over and over again. If you're like, hold on, like, what song is this from? Who is this? A lot of their songs, Cherry Waves was the big one. I want to say Rosemary, which is my favorite song by them. Yeah, you started seeing them everywhere on people's TikToks, and they started looking them up. Just to point out to you how big of an influence that this TikTok thing, because it doesn't even seem like it's a short-lived thing. It doesn't seem like, their songs are viral on TikTok, their listeners on Spotify increased, now we're back down. So let me just tell you something here. I saw Deftones in 2022 at a venue close to me. They were the opener, like, or not openers, they were the headliners. The venue that they played at, the capacity was 4,500 people. So decent mid-sized venue. They were there. Gojira was their openers. So 4,500. We saw them earlier this year. They're doing a stadium tour. We saw them in Columbus, Nationwide Arena. The concert capacity for Nationwide Arena is 20,000 people. So before they blew up on TikTok, they were at a very good sized, very good mid-sized venue, 4,500 people. They played in an arena, 20,000.
Oh, they're rocking it worldwide. I respect that. It's crazy that a band, again, formed in 1988, and this is not even a knock on how old they are. That is just crazy to me that a band formed that long ago, and that would have assumedly hit their peak sometime in the 90s or the early 2000s, 2010s at the latest, right? Is able to find a renaissance in the TikTok age where everything is about getting newer and better, and you leave it behind quicker and all that. So good for them.
And it's not even like it's their TikTok page that went viral. It's not they were making funny videos or putting this out or that. It was just people using their songs in their videos that they were creating, and it blew up from there. So I don't know the guys in Deftones on a personal level, but they don't seem like the type that says, we're popular on TikTok now. On our new album, we have to appeal to the masses and keep this popularity going. Just don't think it's I don't think it's their style to want to stay popular. Gino said in one of the interviews that I read, popularity is not important to him, but longevity is. Even if they are not playing huge arenas, he's just still grateful that all these years later, they were formed in 1988, that people still want to listen and come see them. So while he did say that it doesn't matter the size of the crowd, he's just happy that a crowd is showing up. Point being, I don't personally think that them being viral on TikTok influenced their decision making in this album. Oh, let's not go as heavy because it might not appeal to everyone, blah, blah, whatever you might say. Do you think that that could have any influence on how they made this album?
I think it's hard to ignore, right? I mean, you have certain passive biases that go through your brain in the creative process that you saw a bit of a change in style even just some 5-10 years ago, right, where a bunch of Gen Z or younger millennials, or I guess older millennial, whatever, people of younger generations were starting to wear old dad rock band t-shirts, like your Nirvanas, like your Weezers, like your whatever. But if you were to ask them, name 3 songs from Nirvana, they have no idea, and realistically they don't care. They heard 1 or 2 that sounds really good, they latch onto it. The graphics are really cool. Now I wonder if that's kind of what is happening with Deftones for them. But to answer your actual question is, I'm sure that Chino saying that is valid and very true, because you can look at that and be like, well, we've kind of been this way for so long. We know who we're trying to appeal to, or even rather what we're trying to create. If it happens to appeal to a broader audience than what we expect, great. But that's not necessarily what we're going for. But I do think that, especially when you've been around for so long, if your goal is longevity and popularity in music, unfortunately, hand in hand, right? Like they're very destiny knotted together. So I think if you hear a lot of positive feedback from a certain demographic, sure, no, you're not going to necessarily pander and cater to them, but maybe just as it so happens, you're listening to newer music yourself. You're listening to newer metal bands and kind of how they sound, or certain things that are popping off on TikTok, or just things that you happen to hear and see throughout your day-to-day life that can't help but seep into your brain and thus your creative process. So I 100% believe that Chino is being honest when he says that didn't really play into it, but I do wonder how much of that notoriety from a different crowd kind of just passively seeped in, because it does again seem like this album is different, not better, worse, just different. And even if it's a style that is already part of their overall nucleus, the short answer is I believe him, but I wonder to what extent it passively seeped in.
Yeah, and he even it's nice because the interviews that I've seen with him, they acknowledge that it's cool seeing that it's not just people from the early 90s coming to their shows anymore. He's like, we see a lot of younger people there. He said it's really, really cool to see like a dad and his kids, dad and daughter or son there watching them together and they're both enjoying the music. So like they acknowledge, yeah, we have this young fan base now and it's really cool. But I really don't think that they're like, okay, what are the kids into? What can we write that will be that next thing on TikTok? But like you said, is there some kind of subconscious influence? Like this is what we want to lean into now.
Yeah. So the next question we got here is a bit of a longer one. So bear with me here. But do you think that this feels more like a proper studio album for them? Or is this something they just threw together to see if anything comes from it? And I don't mean that in a lazy way, but many of the songs kind of sound relatively similar. And it just seems like they were trying to experiment with this new sound. Now, obviously, the answer is literally this is a studio album. I'm not an idiot. I understand. I understand how the process goes. For any YouTube comments jumped out, or 7 from the same person jumped down my throat about that. I understand this is literally a studio album. But do you think that this sounds like something that they got in the studio, you know, for a couple weeks, a month, however long that usually takes? I'm not going to pretend like I know. Or do you think that they just kind of, almost like you said, wrote down a few ideas of what they wanted this to be and just kind of rocked out and see what came of it?
So your questions, and I promise people we don't talk about this ahead of time. Your questions are fitting perfectly into some of the stuff I wanted to talk about when it came to the album.
All right.
One of them being the songwriting process. I think it said this is the longest gap Deftones has had between albums. And part of the reason for that is they said when COVID hit, they were writing songs separately during the pandemic. And they had been working on it for, you know, however many years that was really at its peak. And then when they got together to try to put the songs together, they were like, we wrote this at a very different time in our life. You know, we were writing these songs when our livelihood got taken away. They couldn't tour. They couldn't do what they had been doing for how many years at that point. So I have a feeling that the songs probably would have been a lot darker or depressing, things of that nature. So when they got together, they actually pretty much scrapped all the stuff that they were working on previously, and they said this new stuff, this is a better time in our life. This is what we're going to do. We're not going to go play those songs or try to work on those songs that we had together during COVID. Unfortunately, in I think it was 2008, their bass player Chi was in a car accident, was in a coma for a while, ended up passing away in 2013. But there are unfinished songs from that era that they said they are never going to go back and finish because it's just, they were written in a time where they weren't really, I mean, that was a bad time for them. They're not going to go back to that headspace mid 2000s, almost 20 years ago at this point, and try to put those songs together. My point in saying this, they worked on this album after COVID in a better time in their life. Chino said that he had given up drugs already previously. About 3 years ago, he quit drinking. So he's been completely sober for about 3 years. And they were talking about this. We've talked about it on the podcast before. Does pain and hardships bring better art? They kind of asked him a similar question, and he said it doesn't bring better art, but it's just different. It's a different kind of art. Yeah. So he said that they're in a good place in their life. They have a recent surge in popularity because of TikTok. He's been sober. He said that, you know, he spends a lot of time with his kids. They're at a point now where he said that they can tour, and when they tour, they don't do it for more than 30 days, and then they can go back home. He's like, life's good. Awesome. So I think that plays into this album, even if some of the lyrics on here can be darker. Maybe the overall dreamy, atmospheric, ethereal sound that we were talking about, that could play into because of the headspace that the band is in currently.
And that's such a curious duality too, right? Is like we talk about this a lot, where rock and metal are such a genre based on emotion. All music is based on emotion, obviously, but rock and metal are such a genre based off of emotion, not in a negative way, but those more negative aspects of life where you're expected to be aggressive or angry or sad or upset or something, right? We talked about it a lot with Chester Bennington and all of that, but we also brought up the point that whenever you do find a happier place in life, you're still expressing an emotional outlet. It's just happier. And sometimes I think in metalhead fans that can be for the worse because you kind of want something more to relate to, and everybody goes through a struggle or two in their life, and not everybody finds that true happiness at points. So it's a weird duality of, it's not like actually, like Chino said, it's not better art, it's just different. But sometimes that anger and that pain are what people relate to more, which is a sad thing. So maybe we do need more happiness out there in the world. But so that's amazing to hear that they were able to find such a healthier outlet that will promote that longevity and that popularity, and hopefully something that people can relate to. So the last question that I have written down kind of plays into that idea of them changing their sound off of necessity because of changing their lives and COVID changing all of our lives, obviously. Is there anything that you would change about this album?
Maybe a couple more heavy bits. I like the heaviness. I like the way Deftones does it. I think they do it in a unique way that doesn't sound like other bands. So maybe just taking it up a little bit. But that's about it. That's my only thing that I would do different. Like I said, every time I go back, there's something else that I like that I didn't pick up on before. I think Locked Club, the way a lot of the beginning is like spoken word almost. He's not really singing through that. I just think it sounds cool there. Infinite Source has grown on me a lot. It's probably a top 3 of mine on the album. Infinite Source, it sounds like almost a love letter to fans over the years. It's the one where he's talking about his last time on the stage, the love they chased and found. I don't know. I love the way that it sounds, and he did kind of say he wrote it almost because of just all the stuff that's gone on in their past. It scared me for a minute because the lyrics almost made it sound like they were done, like this was their last album. They're going to go on a final tour, and this is it. But based off the other interviews that I've read, it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening.
So what's your take on this as a whole, actually? Because you hear it so often with professional athletes mostly, but professional athletes, musicians, anybody in the entertainment industry really, where it's the idea of ending on top and end a hero before you live long enough to see yourself become a villain type of thing. But I think that's kind of bullshit, if I'm being honest, because I'll use the athletic comparison where it's like, leave the game before the game leaves you. But why? Why not try and change your sound up? Why not go to a different team in sports? Why not continue to try new things? And if they flop, then that's cool. But I don't think that should necessarily tarnish your legacy, because you only get one go around on this planet, right? And thus you only get one go around in your career as a musician. So why wouldn't you continue to try and make it work? That longevity. Now, Chino as such has admitted that he doesn't care about the popularity, it's the longevity, which I think is an amazing thing, because why would you stop when you know that when you're done, you're done? Like, that's it. You don't get to do this. I mean, obviously you can come back, but you don't get to do this anymore. So what's your thought on that? It seems like they're a band that is willing to continue to try new things, or just continue to produce the same thing, at the risk of maybe falling off in popularity a bit more and more and more, even though right now they're clearly hitting a renaissance again. But I think that's a good plan. I think that's perfectly fine to just continue to ride out that wave until literally nobody wants to listen to you anymore.
Yeah, and when you listen to their first albums, first 2, I would say, they were being lumped in with nu metal. So Limp Bizkit and all of those guys. That's so. Could you, when you listen to this album, since this is one of your first experiences with them, would you have considered them nu metal? You know, would you have put them in there with Korn and all that stuff?
No, God, no.
That's who they were associated with, bands that mixed metal and rap and had turntables and all that sort of stuff. Deftones was considered like a nu metal band. And I said before, I'm not great with genres. You know, you mentioned something like, oh yeah, a metal band, and it's like, actually that's post grunge, metalcore,
Yeah,
emo, and it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
I
we're
don't,
all the
I
same
can't get
family
that deep
here.
into it. They changed their sound after their first two, and they came out with that album White Pony, which a lot of people consider it to be their best one. They ditched the new metal sound, and they said that was pretty much intentional. They didn't want to get just lumped in with one group, and even said it's not because we thought we were better than the new metal guys. We didn't want to be labeled as, okay, this is
Yeah.
all they are. And so if you listen to their first album, maybe skip ahead to their third or fourth, skip ahead to their seventh, I think you'll hear those changes in sounds. It sounds like it's something that they do intentionally, but it's not like where they're going in and they're like, okay, now we're going to write something that sounds more pop oriented. Okay, now we're going to write something more electronic. We're just like, you know what? It almost sounds like if they're in the middle of writing a song and it's like, this sounds like something we've done already, something we've done before. Let's change it up a little. If they continue down that path, I don't know if they'll be doing arena shows in 20 more years, but they'll definitely be out on the road. They'll have me listening. I'm sure a lot of other people as well. So I think they should keep doing it. They found a way to change their sound enough, but also you hear it and you're like, okay, this is still Deftones.
I like that. And if there's one really good thing I could say about this album is I'm big whenever we go to listen to these albums of listening to them in the purpose of where they fall in line in the album. It's obviously very different just listening to it day to day with Spotify Shuffle or listening just to one-off songs on YouTube or wherever you find your Rock Rants podcast on your favorite audio outlets. As people are listening to us, they have to hear that in the first place. But I think if I had to pick out one really shining point is this album starts off exceptionally well. So I believe that's My Mind is a Mountain. It is a fantastic way to open this. It really it feels like you're at a concert and the lights are dimmed. You're waiting for the curtains to open. You've been waiting 5 to 10 minutes for that first riff, and it just hits. It hits so well, and they set the tone and the expectation for what kind of album you're going to hear. It doesn't always hit those peaks. Sometimes it hits the valleys, but I think to draw people into this album, I'd say that is probably my brightest shining point of the whole thing, is just the opening. So, if you're going to draw people in, you might as well do it with the very first go.
You're right. That'll be, I don't know what they're opening their shows with right now, but that would be a great one to start with. Lights down low, flash up when the first bit hits. But yeah, I have a question for you now. Because you were listening to this album and you said it's just average for you, which again, when other songs would come on and you liked them more, do you think you're going to go listen to some of their older songs after this? Or are you just kind of like, you know what, if it comes on, it comes on, but I'm not going to go seek them out?
I will probably finish a Deftones album before I finish a Spirit Box album. Which for anybody listening is not even the remotest of slights against Spirit Box. I actually find them to be a phenomenal band. There's just something about it that I can't finish the damn album. I can't do it. And it's not because it's bad. It's not because I run out of time. It's not because I don't have time. I don't know what it is. My brain just hard walls at a point and I switch to something different. But what that means, to actually answer the question, is I'm going to listen to more of this. Like I said, I think as you continue to explain it, as we continue to talk out loud, which happens almost every time we do an album review, I like it more and more. I try to come into these with just the raw initial reaction for a lot of them. For some of them, I did my deep dive into lyrics and all that, like Baby Metal, Avenged Sevenfold for sure. But I think now that I'm understanding that this is a sound that Deftones kind of goes for sometimes, and that was the point of this album, paired with the idea that every time a new song comes on, I seem to very much so enjoy the 45 seconds I hear of it before I switch back. I'm definitely going to go out of my way to listen to more of them, because to me, my favorite kind of metal is that thrash metal, right? Like power chords, hard, quick, get me in, run through a wall, head banging, mosh pit type stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only type of rock that I like to listen to. So I think as I continue to want to broaden my horizons and have different tones to listen to within the metal genre itself, I think that they're gonna find a nice little cozy place in there for me, where when I'm not looking to have my head melted off by solos and stuff like that, I think Deftones will find a nice little spot in there. So I'm definitely gonna give them a listen outside of this.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the headspace that you're in. If you want heavy thrash, fast, whatever it might be, don't turn on Deftones. You know what? They have some, but don't turn on this Deftones album.
Yeah.
So I get that. I told you I heard the song Change like when I was in middle school. And even though I was like, that was good, didn't really do anything for me. It took like 8 more years or however many years until I heard a song that just clicked. I was in the right headspace and it all went from there. Real quick.
Yep.
I do want to mention, because we've talked a lot about the album in general, but just one more thing to note when it comes to the album itself. I think Cut Hands, when we were talking about songs that stand out, Cut Hands is a really good one that stands out to me. And something new, Departing the Body, the closing song, where it starts off kind of slow, there's a build, and even though it doesn't speed up or anything like that, do you remember in that song the first lines that are sung, how it's in like a deep voice?
Yeah.
So I was like, who in the world is that? Like, did they get another band member to sing it or something like that? That was Chino. Out of all the years they've been a band, he has never sung deep like that before.
Okay.
I looked up why. I'm like, why those 2 lines? He said that when an idea comes to him, like if he's in a hotel or at night or something like that, he'll just record something quietly to like remember it later. Like, okay, here's how I want the melody to go. That sort of thing. He says even when he's in his own home, he'll sing quietly because he doesn't want his kids to be like, what is he doing? Like, which made me laugh because it's like they know their dad is the singer of a like really popular rock/metal band. He's going to be singing, but he's still self-conscious about doing it in his own home, apparently. But the idea came to him in a hotel room. He sang it really quiet and low like that. And when he brought it to their producer, like, here's what I want to do with it, their producer was like, just keep it like that. Let's do something a little bit different. And that's the first time he's ever sung really low like that. And that's something else that stood out to me. But anyway, yeah, just wanted to point that out.
I wonder, you said it was I'm sorry, which band member passed away?
It was Chi Chang, their bassist.
Gotcha. So I know that you said that they don't really plan on revisiting any songs that they started to write. One, because that's a very trying period in your life, and especially as friends and in a band and all of that. And maybe they just, have moved on to different sounds and all of that. But I wonder in the name of taking inspiration from your pain, because something we talked about when we did Avenged Sevenfold's album is obviously their drummer, the Rev, who was not even probably, who just was their most creative force, was like wrote a lot of their songs, helped write a lot of the lyrics, this, that, the other. He passed away in 2010 or 2009, one of the two. And even to their album in 2023, he had credits for lyrics on some of the songs. Now, yeah, that's very different. He was just a different mind. But could you see, even though they've already said that they won't, could you see them maybe dipping back into the well and trying to find something from that era again?
He's asked about it a lot. People bring it up. I think the album was called like Eros or something. I can't remember, but they're like, "Oh, are you ever going to release this? You ever going to finish these songs? You ever going to?" And he was asked this last month, and he still's like, "No, we're just
all right." I mean,
that's going to do it.
That's realistic. I think that's a very tough thing to have to go back to.
I keep bringing it up and saying it's not my favorite, even though I like it. But their album Diamond Eyes and then the title track Diamond Eyes, maybe it is my favorite. I don't know. We're going to have to go back and revisit that, but. That song, to me anyway, I could be wrong, it sounds like it's about their bassist. So it almost seems like that next album that they wrote, I believe it's when he was still in a coma. A lot of those songs are from that era that they then wrote, maybe without him. Maybe they did finish a couple of the songs and put it on Diamond Eyes, but I don't know, maybe, is that peak Deftones? Okay, I had to go revisit this album.
That leads to my question now, though, is because we're coming to an end on this album itself. But if you were to recommend to myself and our millions of beautiful listeners out there, if they're unfamiliar with Deftones, if they're deaf to the tones, what singular album or singular song would you suggest starting with?
It's Diamond Eyes. Like I said, it's got a
There it
little bit
is.
of everything. Maybe it's my second favorite. I don't know. They came out with an album after that called Koi no Yokon, and I changed my Steam name to that and everything. That's my favorite album. It's got a song on there, Rosemary, favorite song. But yeah, maybe I'm not giving Diamond Eyes enough credit, but that would definitely be the one that I would suggest first. Because like I said, if you listen to that whole album and you're like, there's not a single song or thing I liked about it, I really don't think you're gonna like Deftones.
Fair.
But yeah, that would be my recommendation there.
Okay. Well, if you have anything to continue to add, by all means do so. But I'm going to give my rating for the album now. So what I initially had written down was 5.5. And again, to those listening or new, 5 is bang on average for us. That is supposed to be the bar. That is like the epitome of average. Below that sucks. Above that's better. 5 is average. So 5.5. It was just that teensy bit above for me. I think as we continue to talk about it, I'm gonna break the mold a little bit and go with a 6.25 because I'm stuck between a 6 and a 6.5. I think I still don't want to just give recency bias of our conversation here too much notoriety and bump it up to that 6.5 because I don't know if it quite gets there for me. But I think understanding that this is what the purpose of the album is, like I've said throughout the conversation, it's not bad. So basically I would never put this specific album on myself, but most songs I wouldn't turn off if they came on. It doesn't do anything devastatingly poor, but certainly fails to capture my attention for more than a few lines or riffs at a time. I think Chino's vocals are just incredible, hands down. Smashing the button, incredible vocals, and from what I can tell, he has a great range. Like you said, he hasn't done that deep voice before ever, and he brings it out now. The instrumentals never miss. They're stunted by a lack of creativity and a non-lack of repetition throughout the album, unfortunately. But I would love to see them give more freedom to the instrumentals, and perhaps they were trying something new, but perhaps they're transitioning sounds entirely. Whatever the case there may be, I think this is a good album. I think this gives something to build off of. But if they don't build this style further, I think it'll continue to be painfully average. But again, for what this album is supposed to be, it's not a knock your socks off thrash metal album. It's be in a certain headspace, listen to this, and you're gonna coast. You're gonna be all right. It's atmospheric. It's ethereal. Like it's all these weird, again, Neil deGrasse Tyson words that you would kind of have to use, but I think they're very fitting and they're a very good thing for this band. So I'm going to land on 6.25. Didn't hate it, didn't love it. Good album for what it is.
So my brother, because like I said, we listen to the same style of music, but maybe it's just a brother thing. We hardly agree on bands that we like. Both times I've seen Deftones, it's been with him. So like we both love them. When I was getting into them, because he liked them before I did, he said the best time to listen to Deftones is he would do it. So we have one of our grandparents lives an hour and a half away from us. And he said that when he would go to visit our grandparents, and let's say it was in the fall, so like a nice 60 degrees outside at nighttime, when he would leave, he would purposefully leave at night, driving home in the dark with the windows down, the heat on, and just kind of cruising on the back roads because it wasn't like on a major highway or anything that you had to do it. Just cruising on the back roads with Deftones blasting. So kind of setting that atmosphere and tone and everything. When you're in the mood or headspace to want to do that, okay, like Deftones is I think is who you go to. Before I get to my ranking, just looking at some of the critic scores and critics ranking. Metacritic, which we bring up every time because they seem to do every album that we do. 91 out of 100. All Music, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Clash, 9 out of 10. Kerrang, 5 out of 5. The Line of Best Fit, which I've never heard of before, 9 out of 10. NME, which we also bring up and typically gives low scores, 5 out of 5 stars. The lowest ranking listed on their Wikipedia page is from Pitchfork at a 7.6 out of 10. The album debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200s. So people like it. Good reviews.
Pay me a prickly pear then. Maybe I'm just an old bastard that doesn't understand anymore. But no, I mean, that is not, that's not shocking, right? Like I'm still sticking with what I said, but that's not shocking. Like if you're looking at the album for what it is, in judging it solely off of that, yeah, I can see how people get to that. So I got no hate in this heart.
Now, we have a lot of music to do coming up. I think if we ever, even if it's a year from now, we get into a lull and we don't know what album to do, maybe it'd be fun if you did listen to Diamond Eyes and we revisited it and see if you say the same things about private music, or if you're like,
okay,
you know what, there's some better ones on here. But again, we'll keep that in our back pocket. I think my ranking that I would give for this album now is an 8 out of 10. Like I said, it started off at about a 6.5 for me. I was like, this is pretty good. It's above average. It's a Deftones album, but more and more things stand out to me the more I listen to it. Like I said, I've probably listened to it. I said 20 before, but realistically, 14, 15 times since it's come out. And yeah, I like it more each time.
All right. Yeah. Unless you got more, that's all I had on it. You did a good job teaching the masses here on this one, because like I said, my goal for this episode was just straight up to listen to the album. I did message you and say that my goal was to just listen to the album and show up and just be the dunce sleeping in the back of the class. But this is because I wanted to make sure I had some good questions for you. So this is probably in the upper half of research that I've done for any of our albums. So I definitely gave this album its due. So I'm not just giving that 6.25 on a blank slate there, but like I said, I will definitely be going back and listening to more Deftones and Diamond in the Rough or whatever Aladdin song you just gave me to go listen to. That'll probably be the first one.
Diamond Eyes, yeah.
There we go. So yeah, like I said, I know 6.25 to a lot of people could mean bad. To me, it means, hey, it's here. I'm all right with it. And if we ever come back to Deftones, which I'm not opposed to, that I'll see what I think otherwise. But good band, fits the right mood. That's about all I got.
No, to the people who have been listening, thank you. Appreciate you. We took a long break and we're back, and we've gotten some YouTube comments on the last one, a couple Spotify comments. We appreciate you. Any suggestions or albums you want us to cover, let us know. And also, thanks for there's been a couple corrections in there about stuff that we've said. Just to make it perfectly clear, there is no feasible way for us to be 100% experts on all of the bands that we do. Some of it requires some research. There's no way we can get to it all. So if you point out a correction to us, we appreciate it. We will try to acknowledge it in the comments and everything. But yeah, that's all I got.
For fuck 'em, Ryan. Well, let me get something straight here.
This is
to
good
all
talk
of our
back.
lovely listeners. No. Ryan's whole spiel there was 100% right. There's just no way we're going to get everything right. It is super appreciated that we have any listeners at all, let alone people who want to follow, comment, this, that, the other, right? Like that is the most beautiful thing for smaller creators. We say that all the time. So please, you are our life force. What I will say, and people have actually been really good about this, is if you are going to correct us or point something out or whatever, just understand that we're humans doing this as a side thing. Ryan's married with a child. I play soccer 18 times a week. We're literally recording this. It's 11:15 p.m. because I had to sit at a soccer field for an extra 45 minutes because they couldn't turn the lights on. Understand that we are trying our best, and if you ever come to us with any malice or anything like that, you better hope that Ryan's the one that gets to the comment first, because I'm not here to pander, and I'm not here to make sure people feel good about what they're saying to us. I don't give a shit. I'm a 32-year-old human being just like the rest of us. So, just like Ryan said, I brought a little bit of heat with that, but just understand that we are trying our best, and people have treated us perfectly fine so far, and we appreciate that to the high heavens. Anybody who has listened or commented, you guys again are our life force, and from the bottom of my heart, that is appreciated. But understand that we are not your run-of-the-mill creators here. If you come to us with the heat, you better be able to handle it coming back, because Ryan will be super nice to you. I'm going to tell you how the fuck it is, but that hasn't been a problem yet.
By the way, that's not a challenge. Don't leave a comment trying to get Smiggy angry, hoping that he's the one that responds, so you can see what he says.
If it's that bad, I'll just delete it. I'll just delete it. You don't get your 5 seconds of fame off of me.
But yeah, appreciate the people who have commented and listen to us. I don't know what's next. Smiggy, you hinted at it before. It could be Poppy, could be All That Remains, could be another band that I have no clue about, because as Smig said, this is his first experience with Deftones. We want to do something next episode where it's my first experience with something that Smigs listens to already. So
it's going to be one of those two. It's either going to be Let me look up the specific names of those albums real quick. But it is either going to be Poppy or All That Remains. So the Poppy album is called
Negative Space, I think.
Negative Spaces, yes. So it'll either be Negative Spaces by Poppy or From All That Remains. I actually don't even know when their most recent album came out. I know. Oh, it's actually 2025. Perfect.
Yeah.
So it'll either be the 2025 album Anti-Fragile by All That Remains or the new Poppy album. It would be one of the two. I'm leaning more towards Poppy right now because as I'm looking, I haven't listened to too many of these All That Remains songs on this album. I think I've really hit the album right before this a lot harder. So it'll be one of those two, probably Poppy, but you know, we'll see when we get there. But this was Deftones. This is great. Hopefully you guys learned a bit of something. I know I did, enough that is at least going to make me want to go back and listen to this band more. So what you got for the ending here?
Well, if you I don't know if anyone does this, if you like to listen to the album that we're going to be doing next and then hear our thoughts on it, looks like it's probably going to be Poppy. So if you want to give that a shot, listen to that the next week, then hear our thoughts, go for it. But that's it. If anyone has anything else that you wanted to say that's nice in the comments, let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week. I'm Ryan.
Thank you all for rocking with us. Smiggy. Love you all. See you next time.
Bye.